Moving on now, for those who keep an eye on ag policy, an important piece of legislation is set to expire in year 2023. The 2018 Farm Bill will expire in September of next year, and Congress will have to act to continue funding the many programs that farmers are familiar with. While we were out at Husker Harvest Days, we were able to catch up with AG Policy Extension Educator Brad Lubben to get his thoughts on what is setting the stage for the next Farm Bill. We're visiting now with Brad Lubben. When it comes to ag policy, of course, Brad's the one we like to bring in. We're going to talk about the Farm Bill. Brad, it seems like the conversations were just kind of winding down, but we're back talking about it again because we've got a deadline coming up in September of 2023, if I understand right. Share the details of that.
You bet. The 2018 Farm Bill was authorized for 5 years. It runs through September 2023. It covers the 2023 crop, but then we're going to be talking about the need for new Farm Bill legislation to work from, generally speaking, from 2024 on. If it expires in 2023 and we don't get a Farm Bill debate done, then we bring up the sort of eternal discussion of, but what about permanent legislation from 1949? That we never get around to actually implementing that, but it forces the discussion, and we expect the discussion to happen over the next year.
Well, let me ask you about that. We do have, the Farm Bill, we kind of tweak things and reauthorize. Why isn't there, legislation put in place indefinitely?
The 1949 Farm Bill we called it permanent legislation. That was the last Farm Bill that did not have an expiration date in it. Every Farm Bill since simply supersedes it, but expires, and it forces that debate on a regular basis. And generally speaking, the debate is always focused on what should we extend, what should we bring up new, what should we reform. So there's always been an argument about trying to make changes as we go. Now, more recently, we had the 2014 Farm Bill. The 2018 Farm Bill was very much status quo. We could have a Farm Bill debate in 2023 that just builds on the status quo as far as farm programs that we know. So it's not permanent, but it's getting long-term.
Seems like the commodity groups have come out with some of their priorities already as we gear up for that conversation. When it comes to setting the Farm Bill, I'm sure the current dynamic of the ag economy factors largely into that. What are you expecting when it comes to setting the stage?
The ag economy has benefited from strong prices. The post-COVID sort of commodity rally, supply concerns across the globe have given us a very strong commodity market. Those higher prices still come with a great deal of volatility, and they're that much higher than where the safety net is. So instead of having the safety net there to help us on the downside, now we've got all this volatility and the safety net's too far below us. That's led to a lot of producers talking about, can we increase the safety net to catch the downside now, or can we focus on the fact that prices are higher, but so are production costs, and the profit margins or the return over cost is still narrow, still shrinking. Outlook's a little more concerning. Can we manage that margin maybe more effectively than we just manage price or yield? Those are the kinds of proposals that come forward. They all come with costs. So if you want that kind of increase in a safety net, how do you pay for it? It's a good question.
Seems like the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the messaging, a lot of the things I've seen have to do with climate smart practices. Do you expect that to take a big shape?
From the administration, we've seen that as a high priority. From the leadership, the current leadership of the ag committees in Congress, we've seen that as a priority. We have rolled out through the so-named Inflation Reduction Act here of 2022, we've rolled out $20 billion of new conservation program spending. That'll come out through the existing conservation programs that we know, but it's focused on climate practices. That adds into a budget debate that's rather interesting. Do we have new money for a bill? Are we forced to talk about a potential budget cutting bill? Or how do we even talk about budget when we've been spending billions and billions on climate? We've spent billions on ad hoc relief. We've spent billions on broadband. We have spent authorized billions for renewables and bioenergy incentives. There's an awful big budget debate that sort of dwarfs the traditional farm bill, and sorting that out for the next debate is going to be rather interesting.
Adding to all of that are the political dynamics of who's in control of the Senate, who's in control of the House. How's that going to play into the conversations?
You're right. The control of the Senate and the House, and thus the control of leadership of the ag committees, really will impact the kind of debate that we have on the next farm bill, presuming that it starts in early 2023 as most expect. the current priorities of climate and equity and food assistance under Democratic leadership and a Democratic administration may look very different if Republicans take one or both houses in Congress. The farm policy priorities, other priorities look different from one party to the next, and that helps drive the debate. That doesn't mean that we'll ignore those things one way or the other, but it's certainly a different kind of debate based on who's in leadership.
So let's lay out the timeline quickly of when we could possibly see a new farm bill passed. You said talking in early 2023, expires September. What happens from there?
Well, let's just think about this year itself. I've actually been somewhat surprised earlier this year that we didn't start talking a little more earnestly about a farm bill debate, in part because Democrats control Congress and the White House, obviously, at the moment. The opportunity to push something now, if they desired, is as good as it's going to get. So the fact that we haven't even started talking about it suggests that everybody has alluded to the fact that it'll probably start in early 2023, subject to whoever is in leadership in Congress at the time. If it's a switch in leadership, we're probably likely to restart some additional hearings before we get into formal markup and committee deliberations. All of that, though, could lead to a process that gets us to a new farm bill by September 2023, if it all happens on time. Most farm bills don't happen on time. So there's still a very strong likelihood that we get the discussion started, but maybe we don't get done and it lingers through late 2023, or even sort of the fail-safe is, no, we don't actually revert to 1949. That's really not in the feasible set. But we can't figure out the new bill, so we end up punting and passing 1 year or more extension of present policy, and we'll live with it and move on for another year.
We'll keep an eye on it. Brad, appreciate your time.
Thank you, Bryce.